everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Mandala Effect. And I am so excited because I have my friend Teresa with me. I've known Teresa for a few years, and we used to have a little group called Ladies What Woo.
That's brilliant. So good.
As a take on Ladies Who Lunch, because we used to meet up quite regularly, didn't we, and talk all about business and spirituality. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So Teresa, over to you. Who are you? What do you do?
Great question. And it's something that I've been dabbling with for a little while. But I am a business and mindset coach consultant. That's what I've literally just determined in these last few days.
I thought you were going to say in these last few minutes.
Literally had to think, yeah, I'll call myself that. And it was one of those things that, because I speak a lot, like I have a big long bio that sounds really fancy and lovely, but when people ask me, I'd be like no idea what to answer them. So basically I have an online business where I work with business owners from all over the world, and I started out just helping them with marketing because I have a degree in marketing. I've been in it for like 18 years or something ridiculous like that. And then obviously as my time went on, and for longer, I've had my business over 8 years now, as the longer I had my business, the more I knew about business. So the more it tweaked over to business. And then probably within the last 3-4 years, maybe even a bit more than that, I have gone all in on mindset, mindfulness, spirituality, and all of these other things that actually, now I've done all that, I kind of think, how did I do anything without that? Like, and how do any business owners do anything without an element of those things? Because if your mindset isn't there, if your mindset isn't where it needs to be to run a business, because quite honestly, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I've had a baby, like I've got children and stepchildren and dogs and all that jazz. But running a business is so incredibly hard that actually more than ever do we need to make sure that we are giving ourselves time and space to explore these other options with that we can work alongside our business.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And we were just having a really nice conversation before recording this, which probably should have been recorded.
I'll have nothing to say now.
But also in the world as well, the world that we're living in, where there is so much fear thrown at us, it is more important than ever to work on mindset and believing in something more positive than what you see in the news.
Absolutely. And I think because I deal with so many small businesses, and when the world goes a bit crazy, they're normally the first people to feel the effects of it. Because, and again, lots of the businesses that I work with, they could be doing, products or services that people might, it's not energy and water. Do you know what I mean? It's like, these aren't the big things that you can't live without. So they often feel the effects first, and therefore they're more sensitive to it, which is almost like a double whammy. It's like as if the world's having this conversation anyway, and then it's almost ramped up so high for these people. But these are the people that should be doing their best to ignore it and to not pay attention to it, because they have a degree of control over their own world. And trying to educate people in a sensible way, because this is the other thing. I don't want people to be frivolous. I don't want people to be like, when we talk money mindset, when we do all of that, it's like if they have no money in their bank, none at all, and they can't pay their bills, I'm not going to say, just manifest on that 5 minutes, then go buy yourself a Porsche. Like, I'm not going to do it, because it's like, I've got to there's an element of realism in all of this. But then when we have the conversation around, okay, and I tend to come at it from doesn't it just feel nicer to think a certain way? So, okay, you've got no money in the bank, or you haven't sold as much as you'd normally sell this time. And you could think, oh my goodness, the world is right. It's going to absolute poop, and I'm not going to be able to afford my house. I'm not going to be able to afford this. No one's going to buy. No one's got any money. And you get yourself into this frenzy, and then suddenly you are sabotaging any opportunity you have to sell, because you don't want to sell because no one's got any money. So what's the point in selling? Or you could have a bad month or no one buy or whatever it is, and you could say to yourself, well, that was interesting. I wonder why that could have been. What can I do differently? And yes, the world is telling me this, but I know there's money everywhere. I know there's abundance everywhere. And I know if I'm clear with my message, the universe or whoever they decide will deliver. And now wasn't the time. And then they go at their actions completely different. And it's like, even if you don't believe it, even if you're sat there going, whatever, just go with it, because doesn't that feel so much nicer than winding yourself up into a frenzy over here? You're still in the same situation. Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Just because you thought better didn't suddenly mean a few zeros jumped on the back of your bank account. Like, you're still the same, but your actions and your results will change because of the way that you're changing. So I think more than ever, it's so important for small businesses to really try and get on board with some of these ways of thinking.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like this is where, before I dove off the deep end into deep, deep spirituality, and the stuff that people really do raise their eyebrows at, this is where I started, was actually, it just feels nicer to see
Yeah.
the good in the world.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
just feels nicer to believe that I am infinite abundance, and it isn't outside of me. And there is, I recorded a video or a podcast or something the other day and explained, that there is enough money in the world for everybody to be a millionaire, for every person in the population to be a millionaire. So, that's a much nicer way of thinking than there
There's
is
no
no
money.
money. Yeah. So,
And we're going to starve and die. And yeah. And like I said, even if it's just a case of just in your own head, and like I've got and it's funny when you say, like, when you dive off the deep end and like 1 minute you're tipping your toes in a puddle and the next minute you are fully immersed. But like when I first started playing with some of this stuff, and as you do, you have conversations with people that you love because you think, oh, well, I'm discovering some new things. Let me share it with you. And of course, family, brother-in-law, no one gets it, right?
no.
So my brother-in-law would say to me, how's the universe T? They call me T. And I was like, it's great. It's really good. And he'd be like laughing to himself, like, what an idiot you are. And then he'd say, and I said to him, I've manifested loads recently. And he's like, what? And I said, yeah. I said, just little things like, went into town, there's no parking spaces. I've got a big car. I flip and hate parking it. So I manifested a really good space, drove around a corner, suddenly a car came out, boom, great. I said the other day, I get some spices delivered in the post for curries. I'm part of this curry subscription thing.
Ooh.
And it's amazing, FYI. And I was thinking to myself, oh, I want to make curry, but I need some, we haven't got any things. So I sat at my desk and I was thinking, if you could like hurry up and make that come, like, I don't know when it's due to come because I never pay any attention, but I could really do with it. I heard the postman come, went downstairs, there they are, thanks very much. And like 4 or 5 of these things happened. And I said these to him and he just looked at me and he went, I think some people call that a coincidence. And I said, I don't care what you call it. I'm just super glad it happens. And that's the point. Like, it doesn't matter like what his thought is, what people think of it. The fact is, I sat there and went, I could really do with this thing a number of different times and it delivered to me. So call it whatever you want. I'm just glad it happens.
Well, and that's it, because it does on a kind of our body, emotional, mental level. It just makes us, our feelings run smoother, we're calmer, we're more at peace, we're happy, we smile more. And and it's a cycle, and that carries on happening, and we do, our thoughts do create our reality, which is, I understand why it's so difficult for a lot of people to believe, because then why is there bad in the world? Why does this happen? Why? But then, as we were just talking about, there is something bigger called the collective consciousness that has an effect on that as well. It's not just our minds, but if we can look after our little corner
Yeah.
of consciousness and keep ourselves, you know, feeling brighter and lighter, then
Yeah.
what a joy.
And I totally get what you're saying. And I have a friend who is very much like, well, he is an absolute atheist. Not that I necessarily come out specifically, I tend to talk about the universe, but he will say, you know, well, if there is a God, then why do children get abused? And why does this happen? And why? And he gets really, really passionate about it. And it's like, in truth, I can't answer you. I don't know. All I know is all I can control is me, how I show up, how I am, how happy I am, and my part of the world. And as long as in my eyes, my world doesn't hurt anybody else's, which it doesn't, I can sit here in my blissful ignorance of what's going on in the world, and I can meditate and journal and feel happy and manifest and do my vision board and all that stuff. It's not hurting anybody and it makes me happy. So I am good with that. Let's go. I'm fine.
And that's amazing, because also, so the whole point of this podcast is the mandala effect. And so if you see yourself as a mandala, so the mandala is like the blueprint of what the universe is designed by, right? So mandala, you see the beautiful mandalas in yoga studios and everything, and they have such a real deep meaning to them. But basically, as you look after your own mandala or your own corner of the world, you have a brighter experience, but that has an effect on everybody around you. I have ripped off the ripple effect. It is the ripple effect. It just affects everybody. And so by you looking after yourself, making yourself happier, helping your business, like the members of your community, everybody you work with, like, look at the effect that's having on the world.
Yeah, huge. And even things like the child I'm bringing up. And I'm very open about the fact I share my daughter with my ex-husband, and she now, because of the school she's at and various logistical issues, she spends more time there than with me. But the impact I try and have on her while she's with me, because I can see the difference of, like, you know, we were talking before that, like, they will get stressed about really small stuff. And I'm just like, just got to let it ride. Like, do I have control of it? No. Then I'm really not interested in it, because it just makes me feel happier. So the fact of, you know, our children, and I just wish to goodness, again, we were chatting earlier, and I was talking about my mum, and I'm really open about it, that she was very negative in her energy. And the effect of my upbringing now that I'm having therapy for, and I'm going through and I'm working on, like, the children that we're creating and modeling and molding are 10 times ahead of us. Like, I only imagine, like, what if I had some of these skills in my 20s or in my teens? Could you imagine? I mean, you're much younger than me, Rosanna, but, like, could you imagine, like, just the difference it would have made to our world? A huge amount of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't have children, and I don't know whether I want to have children, but I know that if anybody should be having children, it's the people in the world who are consciously trying to make it a better place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do I need to put a disclaimer or a trigger warning in front of that?
Maybe.
It's a nice surprise for people. But you know, it's so important, as we are facing things in the greater world and in the population, such as these wars and the climate crisis and stuff like that, that we need to bring conscious people into the world who and who can, I don't know, in their own way, by again looking after their own corner and making themselves live a happy and fulfilled life, that's how the world, like the planet, we're going to save the planet, quote unquote, by bringing up conscious children.
And I think as well, I don't want people to sit here and think that we or, you know, and I know we don't think this, but that we don't care about the other causes and the other things in the world. We absolutely do. And if we can affect change, we will. And I try. And I do also educate myself but in a very different way. So one of my amazing members, one of my students, has a charity called the Global Health Film Org, and basically they work with independent filmmakers to make documentaries where they are living with refugees, or they are in, you know, situations where, and these are really hard-hitting films because they're about really serious and heavy things in the world. But there's a big difference for me from sitting down and watching a well researched, honest, truthful look at a crisis that's in the world than jumping on the over exaggerated bandwagon of drama and pain and trauma and of that is just coming through as energy. Like, no one's actually stopped. You know, again, when the war happened, God, there was a lot of stuff. Like, and I work a lot in social media space because obviously I have a small business. I help people with, you know, marketing, and the stuff that went on social media, like, it was insane. And the stuff that people said and their attitudes about it and the way they fell out about it. Like, someone went on saying, if you're posting while there's a war going on, you are disgusting and your posts are terrible anyway. And it's like, hang on a minute. Like, and actually I responded to someone else's post who I slightly passive aggressive of me, but she commented on, you know, doing what's right for you, and I knew this person who had gone off on one would read the answers, and I responded basically saying, my husband worked in the military for 25 years and flew in and out of war zones his entire life. He has seen stuff that I can't even start to imagine, the average person on the street can't start to imagine, and therefore how we choose to deal with things is up to us. So actually, you know, when it came to the pandemic, he was very not blasé about it. Not that he was reckless, but he was like, I'm not going to let it worry me until I have to let it worry me. Like, the same with the war, you know, we talked about it, and he, you know, and he's been in loads of wars that are happening all the time that no one paying attention to, mostly because the UK have got involved with them, and you know, they have something to do with the blame. But like, you know, there's all these things, and it's like, so it's not that I don't care about them. It's not that I'm sitting in my bubble going, la, 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 with my fingers in my ears. That's not the case. The case is I educate myself properly, you know, or as properly as I can do. So I don't educate myself through Facebook and Instagram. I don't educate myself through listening to other people going, oh my God, did you hear? No, I didn't. And until I get the real facts come to me, then I'm going to not pay any attention. So I do educate myself, but I just refuse to jump on that bandwagon. And if I can't affect any change, the only change I can affect is the direct change around my house and how we deal with, you know, I remember my niece calling me when the pandemic started in tears going, are you scared? And I went, no, darling, I'm not scared at all. But, you know, are you scared about getting ill and die? And I was like, no, babe, I'm really not. Like, and neither should you be. Like, let's not be scared. That's not going to do anything for us, is it? So let's just carry on, enjoy whatever we're doing, and we'll worry about it later.
And unfortunately, fear spreads like wildfire.
Ugh.
It is, and this is because we are built on the survival instinct, and we are, you know, that's how we have evolved, and that's how the human race is so advanced. But because of the survival instinct, and its job is to keep us scared, so it keeps us small and keeps us protected. But we don't actually live in a world that needs that anymore.
Yeah, there's no lions trying to eat us.
No, thankfully. But fear, oh, can you imagine if that got into the Daily Mail?
Oh my God. Like, well, the thing is, this is the thing. You just can't believe anything. My husband, I'm going to say something so funny now. My husband works from home, and if you put it on I think it's the Daily Mail website, it plays videos, so it keeps the computer active. I hope to God no, this never gets back to my husband's work. He works really hard, by the way. But like, it does. And so it's always on his screen, and he does like to look at the news. And I sat next to him having my lunch today, and his computer's open and the Daily Mail is on thing. And I'm just looking across like, and the problem is, I don't know about you, you find yourself getting sucked in for a second. And then you have to go, oh, no, I'm not, I don't think I want anything to do with that. Who am I? What am I doing? Like, let's get back to me. But it is like, they just, the kind of how they stirred this stuff up, I'm not entirely sure. It's insane.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous. But it's because, well, A, it's all clickbait, and they know that people want to feel the fear.
Yes.
Unconsciously, that like the general population don't understand that that's what is running the world, and at the minute is fear. And that's, like, again, we mentioned before that people like you and I imagine the people listening to this podcast are here to spread more light into the world and more love, and kind of help people realize that no, you don't need to be scared.
Yeah.
You don't need to be scared of the pandemic. To be honest, I saw the pandemic as more of a minor inconvenience.
Yeah. 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 Honestly. And that's the thing, like, we were a bit like, oh, for God's sake, really? Really,
Yeah.
do we have to do this? Are we serious? Like,
Yeah.
and then we just tried to ignore it best we could. We used to do, we are so funny because it was summer, like the first lockdown was
Yeah.
summer. And that was a lovely lockdown.
It was
Like,
amazing.
because of the type of business I have, I was working the whole time. My husband worked the whole
Yeah.
time. He just worked from home, which he'd never done before, which is how he knew this Daily Mirror thing. Because he'd like, how do I work this thing? But like, and he didn't have a lot of work to do at the time, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like, I worked the whole time, but we did really enjoy the fact that we couldn't go anywhere and we did have to stay in, and we did a lot to the garden. But we used to wonder, like, we'd go for a little walk around the block, we'd get a gin and tonic, we'd walk around the block with our gin and tonic, having a little wander, like looking at people's houses. And like, again, it was a case of, well, it is what it is. And it's a pain, but I'm not going to buy into it. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in the scare tactics of, and again, like, I remember, when like it first happened. So it was my birthday. It happened, and then 2 days later was my birthday, right? So I've had like 2 birthdays in lockdown. Anyway, he goes off to the supermarket, and because Paul is so not like, when you've been in war zones, like, it takes a lot to stress you out.
Yeah.
So he goes to the supermarket, and everyone is buying like all the tin stuff and the pasta
toilet roll.
and the toilet roll and all that. And my husband, first off, I write him a list that is things like, oh, could you get some fresh basil and some capers and some, we'll have some steak, get some steak. No one's buying that stuff. Like, no one is buying nice, normal ingredient food because they're all panic buying
Baked beans.
bentos pies or whatever it is. It's like, I don't want to be one of them. I don't care what's happening in the world. Anyway, so he not only can get everything he needs to get because we're not panic buying anything, he then gets in the queue, and this woman in front of him has got these flowers, and she'd got loads of them. And he's like, she obviously saw him looking, and she went, they are down to like 50p a bunch, because no one was buying flowers because they're panic buying toilet rolls. So of course he went off. He came back with, I swear to God, about 8 bunches of flowers. It was the best thing I'd ever seen. I was like, yes, I love this lockdown thing. This is ace. If we can keep having cheap flowers, that would be brilliant. But it's like, again, I'm not buying into it. I'm not, and yes, it's an inconvenience. I had to get like, I'm gluten-free, and I had to get gluten-free pasta online, which annoyed me. It's like, hey, listen, you guys, run out of your own pasta. Leave the gluten-free stuff alone. But like, other than that, a bit of an inconvenience. And again, I don't want people to think that we're playing this down. We're really not. And I appreciate that, well, my mum died through lockdown, and we didn't get to see her, like, because of the fact we're in lockdown. So we're not playing it down, but it's like, the only thing I can control is me and my head. And I don't want to be miserable, and I don't want to be unhappy, and I don't want to buy into it. And I think, just quickly, because I appreciate I'm talking a lot, as I do, you never thought that would be a problem. Have you read Soul for Happy by Mo Chowdhury?
No, but that's so weird you say it, because I think my sister, who has had serious mental health issues and is one of the, and kind of buys into the fear, and really sorry if you're listening to this, I doubt she is.
No,
but
my family never listened to any of my stuff.
But I think that she's just bought that book.
So that book, because as we're saying all this, I'm thinking, I hope to God no one sat there going, how very frivolous of you to say this when people died and da da da. And I get it. I totally understand it. But that book was so fascinating, because basically Mo Chowdhury used to work for Google. He was some head engineer dude. And his son went to Dubai. He lived in Dubai. He went to Dubai to see him. And while he was in Dubai, he had to have a routine appendectomy. So his appendix removed and something went wrong and he died. And he was like 21. Right. So like a child dying at a young age, like I can't even start to imagine. And days after his death, he started to write a book called Soul for Happy. And basically it's about being super happy after something, not even that you have to have something so tragic, just generally about living a happy life. But he just happened to start it at the point, literally days after his son died. And it's almost saying like, and it's such a nice example because something so very tragic happened to him that no one can sit here and, you know, not be like, understand how awful that must be. And yet he still came out of it happy.
Yeah. Well, so I can relate to that from my own experience, having cancer and going through that, which is so filled with fear.
And I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
And the medical industry and all of this is very, you know, not exactly, they don't give you, they don't fill you with hope and positive vibes.
No.
But I got through that because I was so positive, and and now I make it my priority to be happy. So I will go and read this book because
he's got a podcast and it's beautiful, and his voice is so lovely.
Oh, I love a good voice.
I think he's from Egypt. I think, but wherever he's from, his voice is just stunning.
Yeah.
But it just kind of proves that it's not that his son died and he went, hey, I don't care, look, and he's smiling his head off. Like, it's that he found somehow to be happy in the worst of moments.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people are doing that, like us talking about the pandemic and flowers and, you know, the garden and whatever, like, we're just doing the same. We're finding a way to manage when things are really hard.
Yeah.
So, because genuinely, like, you know, years and years I've had anxiety, like literally since way before my daughter was born. My daughter's 13. And how I didn't, like, it still amazes me now that something as big as that didn't set me off and didn't cause me to have huge anxiety. And it didn't. And I put that down to all the tools I've learned, all the things I have in place, all the conversations I've had, the people like the likes of you and our other friends, like, you know, and I can surround myself by those people. And I distance myself from the people who take that story and times it by 1,000 and project that back out there, because I don't want to be part of it. All I can control is me. So I'll do what I need to do.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what we all have a responsibility to look after ourselves and our own lives. Our life is our responsibility, and we choose how we want to live that and the impact that then has on the world. Like, that's our responsibility. So we've obviously started off really deep, you know, laughing at pandemics and stuff like that. But
then listen to this, like, what the hell, man? These two people are crazy. We should have started softer.
When we've had a glass of wine. So how did you get so you start off in business, and you know, you've done it for you do it for years. Where did the spirituality, the mindset work, the personal development, because I think in our realm it's all very similar. How did you get started in it? What happened?
So it was a real practical thing, and it was flipping years and years ago. I'd probably been in business like a year or two, and there was a couple of points I remember. One was I went to a conference and I was really excited. I was in Irvine. No, it was in Laguna Beach in California, which is just stunning. And I went to this conference and I was in a room with other business people, and I thought to myself, like, they were Americans, so they're very charismatic, they're very outgoing. And I remember thinking, oh my God, everyone's so successful. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Huge imposter syndrome. Not that I would have known what that was at the time, probably. And I wanted the guy who was heading up the conference, who FYI is really not my bag anymore, but we live and learn. But I wanted him to know who I was because I wanted him to come on the podcast. So I didn't want to answer a question because I thought he'd done a few hot seats, and I was like, I don't want a hot seat in front of all these people because this is just embarrassing. Like, I felt so out of my comfort zone. So the following day, it was like a 3-day event. The following day, after day one, he said, what was your key takeaway from yesterday? And people were answering, and he'd throw them the microphone and they'd go, this is my key takeaway. And he'd go, great, thanks. Next person, you, next. I thought, great, this is my opportunity. And also I knew I'd stand out because I'm British and lots of them were American. So he throws the mic to me, and I said that I'm not being the CEO my business needs me to be, because it was something he said the day before. And he was like, what do you mean? And I'm thinking, hang on a minute. This wasn't part of the deal. The deal was you go, okay, great, thanks, and move on. And I said, well, if I was being the CEO, I'd have done a few different things differently, and I would have done this. And he's like, watch it. And basically started in a flipping hot seat with me. And to cut a very long story short, I was telling them the fact that I'd created this course online. I had all the skills. I knew what to do. I knew, I'd launched online stuff for many other clients. So literally this was like eating and breathing to me. And I'd had my course ready, and I'd sat on it for like a year. And he was like, why? And I was like, well, it's not quite. And I start making all this. And he's like, no, why? And then it was like, I'm scared. And he's like, what are you scared of? And I was like, well, I do this for a living. What if it's rubbish? What if no one buys? What if someone buys and they think it's awful and I'm talking absolute rubbish? And, and I kept giving him all these things. And ultimately we got to the end and he said, so you're scared of failing? And I was like, yeah. And that in itself was a revelation to me because I hadn't really thought about it. And then he said, how many have you sold so far? He said, so if you didn't sell any, you'd fail. I was like, yeah. And he said, how many have you sold so far? And I went, I sat there thinking, I've just told you, I haven't even launched it. And I was like, none, thinking, you idiot. And he went, well, you failed already, then haven't you? And I was just like, and it literally was like a sucker punch in my stomach. And I was just like, oh my goodness, yes, I have. And that kind of got me started on there's something really in this mindset thing, because I knew what to do and I didn't do it. And I didn't even recognize that I was sabotaging myself. I genuinely thought all these reasons I'd got were genuine and real. And, someone's not going to buy it this time of year. And this isn't a good time because the school holidays, and we shouldn't do it at this time. And actually the price isn't right. And let me just finish that and change that. And it was all down to my mindset. It was all down to me being absolutely terrified. And then I got a coach, my lovely Mary Hyatt, who is amazing. And I'd never really had a coach before. And it was so serendipitous how everything happened, obviously, because it just makes me laugh. Yeah, it's coincidence, isn't it? Well, whatever you call it. So I was in San Diego, and I'm sat I'm going to a conference, and I wake up in the morning really early, like 4 a.m. I'm jet lagged, so I'm times all over the place. And I thought I'll do some work for the conference. And the day before had completely overwhelmed me. Like, I'd literally walked into a room with 4,000 people thinking, who the hell do I think I am? And why on earth do I think I can make this work when all these people want to do it? Like, who am I kidding? So I woke up that next morning and I start listening to a podcast. And this podcast is someone I used to really admire and look up to. And she happened to mention that, who her coach was. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, if they coach them, then that would be a good coach. So I went onto her website, and I knew she wasn't going to be cheap. And Mary put on there something, whatever she said just got me like this. So I thought, I'm going to fill in this application form. From a money point of view, I didn't earn enough in pounds, but I did if I converted it to dollars. So when it said, do you earn whatever? I was like, in dollars I do. Yes. So anyway, sent the form off, not really thinking much of it, carried on my day, went to the conference. A few hours later, I get a message. So one of the questions was, what made you fill this in today? And I put, I'm in San Diego. You think I should be buzzing because I've come over here for 2 conferences actually back to back. And I feel completely out of sync and overwhelmed. And so she messaged back going, you won't believe this. I'm in San Diego. She lives in Nashville, right? She's like, I'm in San Diego visiting a client. I'm going home this afternoon. Would you have time to meet me for lunch? And I was like, yeah, I would. So I met her for lunch, and she was so lovely, and I got on with her. And she said to me at lunch, said how much she cost. And at the time, this was many years back, at the time it was 15 grand for 6 months, I think. And I remember sitting there like choking on my food, like, not in a million years am I ever going to pay that money. Don't be ridiculous. Obviously, I was like, okay, yes, thank you. Because obviously I'm going to
in the
pretend.
polite British manner.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, that's cool. I expected that, it's like, changed me. So anyway, she said, when you go back to the UK, we'll book in, because she did like a free coaching hour.
Yeah.
Book it in and then we can have a chat about working together. So I thought, well, I'm going to have a free hour, obviously. So I'll do that. And then I'll just go, I'm really sorry, it's not working for me. Did the hour, loved it, loved her, obviously. Said the call finished. She'd kind of set up right, let me know by whenever or whatever. So I messaged her going, I really want to, but just the money. Like, is there anything we can do on that? No. I said, can I do a payment plan? No. And I was okay. She said, let's get on a call and talk about this. I was thinking, I don't want to get on a call and talk about it because I'm British and we don't talk about money like this. Like, I don't want to. So anyway, I was like, okay. So I get on this call and she really honestly said to me, she's great with like boundaries and stuff. She's amazing. She went, why don't you want to, spend it? Because I had it, but it was my savings and it was like all the savings I had.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm just nervous. No, really, why don't you? I said, what if you're rubbish? And she said, what if I'm amazing? And I was like,
bam,
okay. And she met me dead on. Anyway, so I signed up with her. And within the first 2 months, I'd made my money back because the stuff that she talked me through and helped me through and whatever.
Yeah.
But she was with me at a pivotal time in my business because I was still agency. I had a marketing agency, but I really wanted to transition fully to the online business.
Yeah.
And I started losing some clients because of the fact of we got to an end of contract or project or no major, big, horrible reason, just lost a few clients. And I remember getting on a call with her and being like, oh my God, Mary, this is awful. This is horrendous. Like, what am I going to do? And da, 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 da. And she said to me, what if you're exactly where you're meant to be? And again, at the time, because I wasn't how I am now, I was like, what are you talking about, Mary? And of course I can't be exactly where I'm meant to be. I've lost all this money. And she's like, what if there's a master plan for you? And what if you're exactly where you're meant to be? And I sat there and thought about it. And again, it doesn't change anything. Me stressing out about I've lost loads of clients and I've lost this money, me being fearful about that is not going to change the situation.
No.
Me thinking, what if I am exactly where I'm meant to be, feels so much nicer and doesn't give me the fear and doesn't make me feel sick and also doesn't make me do stupid things. Because this is a conversation we have all the time in the club. If my members get scared, I'm like, on a call now, because I know what you're about to do. You're about to do something really stupid, which you're going to regret because you're scared. So I need to talk you down and say to you, if you weren't scared, would you do that? And they go, no. And I'm like, well, let's not do it then. But it just made me feel so much better. And she was right. That's the start of my online business. I then deleted a load of other clients, said to my husband, any chance you don't mind if I earn no money for a little bit, and started the online business. And do not get me wrong, it has not been plain sailing since then. I think, and this is, I think, a mistake that people make when they find that mindset work or that mindfulness work or the spirituality. They think we're walking around in this dream state all the time, having the most wonderful of lives. No, we're not. The same rubbish still happens. The same, this year has been a really difficult business year for me. Like, it's not that we don't go through these things. It's a constant practice. But the difference is I have tools and tactics and methods and people in which can help me come out of it so much quicker. And I say to my members all the time, there's no bad emotion. There's no emotion that you shouldn't feel. There's nothing wrong with being angry or peed off or scared or fearful. There's nothing wrong with that, but I don't want you to stay there very long because it doesn't feel very nice. And therefore we need to find ways in which we can bring you out of that as quickly as we possibly can, because then it just feels so much nicer and we make much better decisions.
Definitely. It feels so much nicer for, our bodies, like we mentioned before, but it has such a deeper, more profound effect than that. That's the energy that you're calibrating, the frequency that you're calibrating at is much higher therefore you're then attracting things into your life that match what you're putting out there. And that's how the inner world creates the outer world. So when you're feeling better, better stuff does come in. And that's, you know, I mean, we won't get into a law of attraction manifestation masterclass here, but that is ultimately it. What's the best tool? So when you're feeling scared and low and not, you know, and what's the best tool that you have in your toolbox, in your practice, that kind of helps you get out of that and come back to a state that you want to be in?
Yeah. And I think, you know, you're absolutely right. We still feel it, like,
Yeah,
more than I would like to at times.
absolutely.
So there's a few things. It's a bit of a mix of things. So I meditate and journal. They're like my two go-to. I love them. And when things are hard, so this used to help me so much. When I first got together with my now husband, he had a daughter who was 15. Well, can you actually imagine a stepmom coming in with a 15-year-old girl? And I only had a 4-year-old. So the hell she gave us was like nothing I'd ever witnessed. And I really struggled. And my emotions were like so heightened, and I was so angry and upset and frustrated. And so I used to journal out a lot.
Yeah.
And again, this came from Mary, but she was like, I want you to journal. And I want, if you've anybody's, and I know that we've read Chimp Paradox, and he's amazing, but you know, that chimp brain is so powerful, you can't shut it up. So journaling allows, and the fear thing, just get it all out, anything. And the thing is, we don't normally give it space to talk because we're trying to shut it down, which then means it's going on for longer, and it means that
Gets louder.
and actually, if we just sit there and go, okay, well, what am I scared of? And write it down and journal it. Now, with the anger thing, and the stuff I used to write down, Jesus Christ, if they ever read my journals, I don't even think I can read my journals back because I write purposely in a way that no one could read it, including myself. And then I would write, what if I came from love? Like, I'd literally go, bleh, like vomit on the page, all the angry, mean, horrible stuff. And believe me, I let it all go. And then once I'd worn the chimp out, once I'd worn it out, I would go, what if I came from love? And if I came from love, I'd think, my stepdaughter's 15 and her mum's just left her, and something. And my poor husband is sat in a position where he's stuck between me and his daughter. And suddenly, like, I could physically feel the energy calming down in my body and the stress just going. And it's not even that I resolved anything. It's not that, like, I got to the end and went, this is how to fix it. It wasn't that. It was just giving that time. So again, the fear, we do an exercise in the club where we talk about fears, and we literally get them to write. We allow the chimp to do their worst. Okay. Give me everything you're scared of, everything you're terrified of. And then I get them to write, what would they do? So often things like, so let's say one of them was, one of my amazing ladies was going to speak on a stage, and she was terrified. And I think that's something that lots of people can resonate with. Personally, I flipping love it. I'm one of those weirdos, but you know, there is a lot of fear behind putting yourself out there. So I was like, okay, well, let's work on it together. And we did it in a group. And I was like, what are you scared of? What could happen? Well, I could forget my words. Okay, fine. What else could happen? Well, the tech could stop. Yeah. So then I filled in a load of other ones for her, because it's like, believe me, I've spoke for a long time. I know what can happen.
This could
Okay.
go wrong. This could go wrong.
Yeah. Like, literally all these fears that she'd never thought. She's like, hang on, I thought you meant to make me feel better. So go through all these fears. And I said to her, tripping up the stage is always one of my biggest fears. Like, I'd feel like such an idiot. The other fear that genuinely at points has been up in my world is I'd actually pee my pants on stage. I did this one of my biggest ever talks in the early days. It was over in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and it was for Lead Pages, a fairly big tech company in my world. And before me was a guy called Pat Flynn, who's huge in my world. And I was so scared, and I kept going to the toilet. I literally didn't need the toilet. There was nothing else coming out. And we had this really lovely concierge guy who would look after me during the event. And I stood next to him and was like, you must thought I was a crazy British person. He was like, I said, I think I'm going to pee my pants. What if I go on stage and I pee my pants? Genuinely, like, terrified of peeing my pants. So I get them to write everything down, and then I go, okay, what would we do about it? And so you forget your words. What will you do? Well, I suppose I'd just carry on, like, or they wouldn't even know you forgot your words because they don't know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
What if the tech fails? Well, it's not your fault. There's nothing you can do about it. Like, could you do something else instead? Like, could you print off a copy for you just in case? Tripping up the stage is always a huge one for me. I do get terrified of that. And it's like, so what I do before I go into every place I speak at, I go into the room before anybody else is in there, and I physically walk the walk of what I've got to do to feel how it feels under my feet, to check how deep the steps are, to like just to kind of preempt that. And what happens is when you write all these things down about what, so you're imagining the worst, you're going, okay, let's say you've given me the worst. What would I do? And the point is, it takes away all of the drama from it, all of the stress, all of the fear. Cause it's like, if I fell up the stairs, I'd feel really freaking embarrassed. And I would try and make a joke out of it because that's the kind of
Yeah.
person I am. And I'm like, well, you're not going to forget this, are you? Like, talk about making an entrance. Like in my head, I can already see what I would do. And I wouldn't die, would I? And for me, and I joke, and this is very much a personal joke with me, the two biggest things that could go wrong in my life, the most two awful things could be one, that I got pregnant. I'm 43. I have grown up stepchildren and a 13-year-old daughter. I do not want a baby. Thank you very much. Like that would literally kind of ruin my life. So I can't get pregnant. So that's fine. And I can't die. That's the other thing that would really
Annoy
be a
you.
pain. Yeah, it like I've got plans. And so if those two things can't happen, then do you know what? Fine, let's go for it. But I think you need to go through that process of letting the chimp do all the stuff it wants to do, give you all the fears, but listen to it. Like I said, we're so often like, I'm so scared, but I also don't want to pay attention to the thoughts in my head. Well,
Yeah.
let's write them out and let's go, okay, well, what would happen and how would I deal with that if that happened?
Yeah.
And then write out what if it goes exactly as you want it to go, and how amazing would that be?
And that's where the magic happens, when
Mm.
you can step into
Yes.
exactly how you want it to work and
Yes.
exactly what you, and generally that's how it goes. You
Yeah.
know, it's the same as you get in a parking space, and
Yeah.
you know, um
So can I tell you a story about this
yes.
visualizing? Because this is such a cool story and I love it because almost I don't believe it. So I knew about manifesting, visualizing, and imagining, and I tried to do it, and I'd worked really hard at doing it. And sometimes I felt like it worked. Sometimes I was like, this just doesn't work at all. Like I printed off that I had loads of money in my account and put it in my wallet. It hasn't happened yet. Like, so there were things that I was a little bit doubtful of. And my husband and I went over to Nashville to see
Yeah.
the lovely Mary and stay with her because we're now very good friends, which is just ace. And we had got, and I have to clarify, this first class flight on points. I didn't pay for it, FYI,
Yeah.
because it was about 20 grand. And there's not a cat and else chance I could afford that for a first class flight. But we'd got these points because we fly a lot. And we were flying on our first ever first class flight to Nashville. Okay.
Yeah.
And to say I was excited is an understatement. I had literally, without realizing what I was doing, I had envisaged every second of that whole time.
Yeah.
Like, I knew what part of Terminal 5 at Heathrow I'd go to. It was a private bit. You don't check in with everybody else when you're first class. So I
Oh
knew you
no.
went there. I knew that you went through your own security. I'd seen pictures of the Concorde Lounge. I know what it's like to get on a plane and to see people turn left. I had imagined what it'd be like to be taken to our seats. I'd imagined what the seats would be like. I'd imagined all of these things over and over because I was so excited. And I talked about it and I'd like played it over in my head a million times. So we get to the airport very early because we can't wait to sit and spend time in the Concorde Lounge. And we go up to the desk. And bearing in mind, I've been to the States a lot at this point.
Yeah.
And obviously, we walk into first class area, and I am just like literally spilling over with excitement. Go up to the check-in desk, put in my things. Are you on Esther's or Visa's? Esther's. I can't seem to find your Esther. I said, well, I've got one. Like, I'm an idiot. You know, I've been to America before. Are you sure? And she's doing this. And I went, oh, it'll be under my other. And I realized the words that came out of my mouth, my other name. I changed my passport and forgot to change the Esther.
Oh no.
And therefore, the Esther's no longer valid. Therefore, I can't fly. Right. And I literally was like, you are kidding me. You are kidding me. And she was like, okay. So I was like, what do we do? She went, you'll have to apply for an ESTA and hope it comes through. Well, ESTAs take 48 hours
Yeah.
normally to come through. And when we went onto the website, not that my husband told me this, the actual page said, please allow up to 72 hours because we were having some maintenance or whatever. So we start filling in the ESTA form and I am freaking out, like literally hyperventilating. And then I remember all the many things I've learned and all the tools I've got. And I'm like, me doing this is not going to change the outcome. It's just going to make me feel really crap. So I'm going to calm right down and I'm going to go, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, so I might not get on this flight, Paul. I really don't want you to miss out on this first class flight. I think I'd have been gutted if he'd gone without me. I really don't want you to miss out. You go, I'll get a later flight. And I started feeling much calmer about it and we put in the application and they don't email you. You just have to like refresh it to see if it's gone through. So I said to him, I'm going to go for a walk and get a drink. And as I'm walking around, I'm like, there's no way I'm not on that flight. Like, I'm on that flight already. I've sat in the seat. I know what it's like. Like, and in my head, I was like, once I've calmed down, I was like, this is going to happen because I don't know. I visually have no other scenario that's about to happen. Like, there's no other outcome. The only outcome that is happening today is that. And I am so damn sure of it because I have played it over and over and over. And it wasn't even like I was thinking at the time, like, I visualized this, therefore it's going to happen. I wasn't thinking that at all. I just genuinely in my head was like, no, I've already done that flight. Like, it's happened. I've taken it and it's fine and it goes okay. And so, yeah, I know this has happened, but I literally can't see any other outcome. Physically couldn't see it. I go for a walk, come back. He's still refreshing. No, nothing yet. And this is like about an hour after we filled it in.
Yeah.
So, and obviously we're still in the first class bit and they bought us water and various things. He goes off for a walk and I'm like sat there thinking to myself and I'm like, yeah, no, this is happening. Like I am bang on adamant, hit refresh, approved.
Yes.
Ran to the woman like, oh my God, like freaking out. It says it's approved, it says it's approved. And she's like, hang on. And she was like, oh my God. She goes, when you came here, she said, I sat here going, there is no way on this earth you're getting on this flight. She was like, I have never seen an ESTA come through so quick. And she said, she checked me in. I put my bags in. I said, and I've got Paul's passport. And she said, go and sit down and pretend it hasn't approved. Because we are so mean. So I got these like my boarding passes and I've got them here. And I'm sat there thinking, come back, Paul, come back. But of course I can't text him, go come back because he'll totally give it away. So I'm sat there for like another 10 minutes, like, please come back, please come back. Anyway, he came back and I was like, so they just took our luggage in and then obviously couldn't hold it in for another second. And we got on the flight and everything was exactly as I imagined it. Yeah. And it's only after the event that I'm like, yeah, of course. And that felt to me suddenly like, that works. But I wasn't trying to inadvertently, I wasn't trying to visualize it. I just was so excited. I couldn't help but visualize it. And then it literally panned out exactly as I thought. And everything felt like I'd done it before because I'd done it so much in my head. And it was just like, it's just the best story because I literally was about to die because I didn't think we'd get on the plane and we did.
And well, so there you go. You didn't think you'd get on the plane, but you knew you were getting on the plane.
Because for that minute, I was like, oh my God, this isn't happening. And then I changed my mind and went, okay, well, me stressing, because I started to freak out going, this isn't happening, this is happening. And then I went, no, I can't think like that because this isn't helping me. All I can do is what I can do. And then I started to really think about it and I was like, hey, there's no way this isn't happening. Like, there's no way I'm not on that plane because I'm there. Like, I'm literally sat in the seat. I can see it already. Like, there was just no way that wasn't going to happen. And it just made me realize that that's what that is. Like, I hadn't put two and two together and it all panned out as exactly as it had played in my head the hundreds of times that I played it.
Because what if you are exactly where you're supposed to be?
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of, if we could like sum up this conversation, it is that at any one point in our lives, we are exactly where we're supposed to be, no matter how uncomfortable or how joyful it is. In that moment, you're there to experience something and you either learn a lesson or you are given an amazing gift.
Yeah.
A lesson
Yeah.
is a gift because
And I was able to share that.
yeah.
You know, that lesson that I shared with my audience, I got into the Concord Loud and I wrote an email to them all, to my email list, and went, you will not believe what's just happened to me. And talked about the fact that I visualized it, talked about the fact of I knew like, losing it and screaming at my husband and crying was not going to change
No.
the current situation we were sat in.
No.
And it was such a good lesson, such a good lesson.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Such a funny story, isn't it?
That's a really good story, especially, you know, I think when you start out, and we started out in a similar community, that's how we met. And in this, within this community, it was all about your vision board and visualization and manifesting. And that's not, I feel like it missed out a lot of stuff, but it's not always about just sitting and obsessing over the vision board. It's about, it's who you are, it's who you become. It's never about the vision board, and it runs so much deeper. I think it's amazing that your intuition just knew that you were supposed, like, because here's a theory for you. Because your higher self is, your intuition has lived every single possible reality, and that's how you know, and that's how you know who you're supposed to be, and that's how you know who you're becoming, and how and you're and you know exactly where you're supposed to be, because you as consciousness has lived every single reality possible, and now you're just living this reality.
And I love that. I love it. And it makes sense when you say that, because when I said I was already sat in the seat, I was like, I knew I was, and I could feel it, and I could visualize. And I love that. Like, there's nothing nicer than like getting excited and thinking about something. And that's what I think, it just feels so good, right? It feels so nice to sit there and be like, oh, I've sat down and they've handed me the champagne and they give me the menu and like, and I'm playing it all through my head. And also it just gives you such a clear picture of what you want, that, like I said, it gets to the point where you're like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And I think when times are hard, which they will be, when business is rubbish, when someone lets you down, when like I just had someone leave my membership who I'd invested a huge amount of time in, and I was gutted. I was like, that feels like a genuine like slap in the face, you know. And it would be very easy to be like, well, what's the point? Why should I even bother? I invested my time and I did this and they don't care. And it's like, when the times are hard, having that vision, having those thoughts, knowing it's coming, and it is, and it might not just be when you think, it might not be tomorrow, it might not be whatever, but it's coming. And again, and another one I did with my brother-in-law was, you know, in the UK they have the Amaze drawers, the house.
Oh my God, I keep getting sponsored them advertise them on Instagram.
So there was a house up for sale that is my dream house, like literally my dream house, in the Cotswolds. It was one of the first we ever saw. And I was like, I want that house. It's so beautiful. So I was talking to my brother-in-law about it. No wonder he thinks I'm crazy. And I said, he's like, oh yeah, I was going to join that. I said, don't bother, I'm going to win. I said, it's my house. It's already there now. I'm manifesting it. It's fine. And he was laughing. I said, and if I don't, it's because something better's coming. And it's not the right time. And he's like, oh, that's great. Either way, you're a winner. I went, yeah, I am. Yeah.
Obviously.
Because again, if I didn't win, which I didn't, which is fine, I genuinely feel fine about that. I'm not angry or upset or annoyed. It's like, well, that's fine. Something else better is coming. And then the next Amaze thing came out, and it was a house in London. It was in Wimbledon or something. And my husband was like, oh, should we put, I went, no, because I don't want to tell the universe I want that house, because I don't want that house. I wanted the Cotswolds house. So I don't want to confuse it by making it think I want something else. That's the house I want. That's the house I dream of. That's the house I think of. Like, so that's the house I want to keep in mind. So no, we're not going for that other house.
That's so, well, you have got to be like, you've got to be clear with your intention.
And almost bloody minded about it. Like, you know, almost like I said, stubborn by the fact of, no, I don't want to go for the other house. Yeah, it's a beautiful house. He's like, we could sell it. I was like, yeah, no, I don't care. want to go for it, because
No.
that's the house. The only reason I entered the competition is because that's the house I want. And when I saw it, I was like, that's my dream house. That is literally the house I want to live in. Like, so I'll go for it. And if I don't get it, I've told the universe I want it, and something better is going to come, and that's fine. I'll look forward to that.
Well, I cannot wait to have the housewarming
Honestly,
when the current owners sell and you move
yes,
in,
and I buy it,
and you buy
exactly.
it,
Yeah,
and we'll have a massive housewarming. That'll be so
exactly.
much fun. Right, I want to be really mindful of your time.
I know we've
I
talked
could
so much.
carry on this
I'm so sorry.
conversation for hours, but just really quickly, it's your last moment on earth and you're about to be really inconvenienced because you're going to die.
Oh,
I'm sorry to be the bearer
terrible
of bad news.
timing. Terrible timing.
And so you've obviously given the world a lot of value, but all of the value you have given the world is going to be erased with your death, with your departure. Everything that you have given will no longer be. But you get to leave one piece of advice. You get to leave one message. What is it?
So it's something that I borrow from someone else, because I heard it said on Mo Chowdhury's podcast, and I quoted it in my chapter of the book that I was part of, that said something along the lines of, I should really know this verbatim because I say it a lot. It's to do with the fact that people are always striving to something better, and that's fine. Okay. It's always fine to want something bigger and better, but not at the expense of not living now. And this said, if what I had now was all there was, could I be okay with it? And I just love that. And it's like, yeah, I love my life. I love what I've got. I love my husband. I love what I do. And if this is all it was, then I am more than happy with it. Do I want more? 100% I do. But I am happy where I am. And that's the most wonderful, peaceful, calm, joyful thing that I can think of, is that if this is all there was, would I be okay? Yeah, I would. And
what a note to leave it on, because that is just incredible. And you got me smiling like a buffoon with that. I think there's Dr. Joe speaks a lot about living the life that you love, and loving the life that you live. And that is the key to a happy and fulfilled life.
100%, 100%.
Right, well, I'm going to let you go because I know time is of the essence. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to put all of Teresa's links in the description so you can find her. She's got an incredible book. She has an incredible community. If you've got a small business, check out her membership, and she gives so much value. Just follow her on Instagram, and you will. It's what Instagram should be. So thanks. So thank you so much for joining us. My pleasure, Rosanna. Honestly, I've had so much fun, and I love seeing you in this role, in this journey, with this message. You are meant to do this. So I love it. You can make me cry. We don't cry on camera.